Good evening, YTPC. Welcome to the Brooklyn Pipes 50 subscriber special. You have to forgive me if it's a little bit noisy. It's a very hot and humid day and everybody's got their air conditioners on. There are some vehicles traveling around, but hopefully we'll get through it. I don't think it's going to be that bad. So, as promised, I'm going to talk to you about my top 3 favorite blends and a couple of runner-ups, but I also wanted to share more stuff about my personal life. And before we get to the really personal stuff, I'm going to go through my top 3 most played vinyl records over the last, it's called the last decade and a half that I've been collecting them. Oh boy, it's been a really weird time. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, but the job that I lost kind of asked me back in a way, and I don't think I'm going to take it, but you'll find out about that in a minute. Let's talk about my favorite blend. I'm smoking out of the Peterson Carrollton number 99 that broke. I super glued it back together, and it's kind of been holding up. I haven't had any problems since I glued it back together. If you didn't see the picture, what happened was this silver band that they have around here pressed the wood to the acrylic bit so strongly that when I went to pull the bit out, it actually completely ripped apart the briar that the silver band was around. So if you were to look at the picture, you would see it's basically this silver thing stuck to the acrylic bit, and then the shank was cut off basically right over here, right where the metal starts. I found a way to super glue it back together where it's still aligned the same way that it was before, because it was kind of jagged in a way that it kind of formed like these natural joints when I glued it back together. So that was lucky. If it was a completely clean flat break, it probably wouldn't have worked out. So my top 3, as you guys have probably figured out, I'm mostly an aromatics smoker. Specifically vanilla. I love vanilla aromatics. I love it when they're really strong and really soaked in that vanilla flavor, so that it stays throughout the bowl. It doesn't disappear after the first quarter or half like some other casings do. Incidentally, I haven't really smoked a pipe since my last video. I've just been really busy. It's so hot and sticky outside that it just coming out here removes most of the enjoyment of smoking a pipe. It's cooled down a little bit, there's a nice breeze, so right now it's not as bad as it was, but everything is covered in pigeon droppings. So my third favorite blend, we're going to go up the ladder. My third favorite blend, it's a relatively new one that I've discovered. It's called Queen Anne's Revenge. It's either Sutliff or Cornell and Deal. I'm pretty sure Sutliff. What it is it's vanilla plus rum plus a little bit of spices. Queen Anne's Revenge was a pirate ship, of course, and it's got that Caribbean kind of flavor profile to it. The rum stands out, the vanilla stands out. I don't think there's any citrus, and there may be a hint of coconut, maybe a tiny little hint, or maybe I'm hallucinating it. That was one of the tobaccos I got in that last big unboxing, where there were like 22 little pouches of tobacco of 1 or 2 ounces each. It's starting to thunder. So I did tin a whole bunch of my tobaccos. I put them in these mason jars. Some of them are legit ball jars. And things went wrong with one of my blends. It actually molded in the jar, which is something I might talk about in a future video. But for the rest, it's been fine. So Queen Anne's Revenge was number 3. Number 2 is Sutliff Vanilla Custard. I have it mixed in here with Lane 1Q. I like this combination of blends, and in the jar they smell really nice together. I really enjoy the flavor profile I get from that. It's very nutty, very sweet, and the vanilla custard, that vanilla lasts a lot longer than the 1Q does, in my opinion. Which brings us neatly to the number one. Better hurry this along. That brings us neatly to number one. Sutliff Creme Brulee. I have ordered pounds of this stuff. You've seen one of my unboxing, there was an 8-ounce bag of what I called the goopy stuff. I was almost embarrassed to admit was one of my favorites. It's been a very, very good smoke for me. The vanilla lasts for a very long time. It's very sweet. It's got this nuttiness to it, and it's like the aftertaste is good. The foretaste is good. Everything about it is nice, except that it goes out very often. This is not a beginner's blend. My two runners-up are Cornell and Deal Innsmouth, and honestly a tie between Peterson, formerly Dunhill, Nightcap, and Early Morning Pipe. I find them both, they are distinct, but they both fulfill the same smoking need for me. Like when I just want that pure tobacco and I want a nicotine hit and I want to swallow and feel the nicotine in my tummy, those do it for me. But when I just want a nice aromatic smoke, these vanilla products are the best for me. It's pretty much the only tobacco that for me is worth going out here in the sticky heat to actually smoke. I love it. So, onto the music. This is where you'll get to know me a little bit more. What I did was I selected these top 3, the ones I played the most, besides maybe 1 or 2, because they actually, I realized looking back at it that they tie into the parts of my life, the times in my life that were formative. One was transformative and the other 2 were sort of just formative, we'll say. Start with this is kind of crazy. Okay, it's a lot of thunder. We don't usually get this much. Let's start with this. This was from the best time of my life ever. This is Holy Diver by Dio. It's a picture disc, and the way that they get a picture disc is you take 2 pieces of vinyl that have the actual artwork on them, you stick them back to back and you melt them together. Then you sandwich those 2 between 2 layers of clear vinyl, and the clear vinyl is what actually has the music ingrained into it, the actual waves that the needle follows to then reproduce the sound. And it's inferior to black vinyl because of the carbon black pigment. It's called carbon black. It actually strengthens vinyl and rubber. That's why tires are black instead of blue or red or white. Like they used to have white wall tires, but you want that carbon black in the rubber so that it's stronger and lasts longer, because that's really the point of tires, is you want them to last a very long time. And it's not like the music that's ingrained into this vinyl that's been imprinted is gone or super muddled after being played 100, 200 times, but the distortion on the guitars does lose a little bit of its airiness. The first thing that goes is the higher frequency. That was like right here. I think I just got hit by lightning. Oh, it's starting to rain. I think I might have to make this a 2-parter. So that was Dio. That's how you get the music onto a picture disc. The music itself, most of you know it. It's somewhere between rock and metal, and it's got this satanic imagery on it, but Ronnie James Dio himself is actually very Christian. He was a Catholic, and like the last months of his life when he was dealing with cancer, he was really talking about how much his religion meant to him yeah, I'm gonna be back and continue this one. Stay tuned. And we're back like Jack. It actually thundered and lightning for most of the night, and actually today as well. The part one was actually from yesterday. Ooh. So Ronnie James Dio was a very hardcore Christian, and that's something you'll find a lot in metal. A lot of these bands with heavily satanic imagery are actually devout Christians in their private lives. Now, I started listening to this album basically right at the end of high school. I was 17. I had a girlfriend, and basically I got laid to this album. That's why I really like it, and it was one of those formative experiences because it sort of recovered me from the sadness of the previous chapter of my life. That sad time in my life is represented by this album. This is Slipknot's self-titled album, and this particular one is on a very, it's on a limited edition, very high demand color of vinyl. See that? This is my favorite color. Well, it's a little bit less yellow than my favorite kind of slimy nuclear green, but this is, you know, it's still so cool. See it spinning on the turntable, it's just this like green thing, and I don't own anything else that's green, so it's like a flash of color every time I play it. Now this album is very, very heavy. A heavy distortion, very low drop tunings, like drop B, almost drop A, I think maybe a couple of times. This is the band that contains that had Paul Gray in it, the bassist that sort of inspired me to do my own thing with bass. Everybody around me was playing guitar, and one of the sadder aspects of this time in my life when I was really listening to this was I was sort of getting bullied by people that I considered to be my friends. One of whom, the last time I saw him, after like years and years of not speaking to him, he was walking into my friend's house with a guitar on his back in a fender pouch. And they went off to hang out in another room, and so just out of curiosity, I opened the guitar bag, and I recognized the guitar. And it wasn't his guitar. It was a legitimate Fender Stratocaster that he borrowed from my other friend Zach, and had stolen. He'd sort of like kept it sequestered in his garage, and something was happening. Zach was coming over to go get it, and this douchebag took it out of his home, walked it a couple of blocks over to where I was at my other friend's house unannounced, and decided he was going to hide it there. So being that this dude had stolen from me and lied to me and abused me in all sorts of different ways, I arranged for the guitar to get stolen back. I got it back to the original owner, and we had some fun talking about it, because this guy was genuinely, I call him a douchebag, but to be honest, that's kind of insulting to feminine hygiene products, because those at least have a purpose. They at least accomplish a task in the greater world, and this guy does not. So if there's one song to listen to understand what Slipknot is about, it's off of this album. The song is called Me Inside. It's track number 8 on Slipknot's self-titled album. It's got everything. It's relatively short, and it's got all the screaming and clean vocals, a little bit of like really fast sort of rappy like type vocal delivery, which is sort of rare going forward. There was really just a few years where Slipknot and a few other bands were were doing that. They were rapping along with the metal, but in a way that sort of worked with the metal. It wasn't. It's not like gangsters. Like I got bitches, I got hoes, I got rare designer clothes. It's not that. It's all about that angst of being surrounded by people that you thought had your best intentions, but it turns out they were sort of manipulating you for their own ends, and really not even for any sort of real gains. It was really just more of a way for them to massage their own ego. But I had my own large ego back then. I thought I was the shit. I thought I knew everything. I thought I was the best. But I sort of had reason to. The people around me all had one thing in common. They had tutors that their parents had gotten them because they were falling behind. But they didn't realize what they were falling behind relative to. The classes that I was in, we're talking about elementary school at this point, not even middle school or high school. They were falling behind relative to me. The teachers that I had taught as advanced of a concept as someone in the class could understand. And that was my forte. With English, math, science, computers, we were learning how to type back then. And by the way, those computer teachers told us that this whole internet thing is a fad. It was going to be gone in 5 years. And I remember telling my teacher, like, it's not going to go away. Not only that, we're going to have these little computers in our pockets without keyboards. We're just going to touch them. And we're going to start watching videos that are a minute long, maybe 2 minutes at the most. And that's how people are going to interact with information, because it's faster. It's more efficient. And I swear to you, one of my teachers said, who wants that? Who would want the world in their pocket rather than going to a library or sitting down at their home computer? Real intellectuals are going to want to go to the library. They're going to want to have a home computer that they do everything on, maybe for a few minutes a day, and all the rest of the stuff is going to be just like it was 20, 30 years ago. And they were all wrong. I knew they were wrong then, okay? So the exact opposite of computer teachers telling me that the computers and digital stuff is going to go away is this. This is Animals by Pink Floyd. I have a gatefold. It's on black vinyl. I do enjoy the photographs they have in here. I'm not that much of like a photography buff, but I like the composition that they have here. It's interesting, especially like these gates over here. I don't know why, but I like looking at those gates. It's like, and in the background over there, there's a factory with 3 chimneys and a flying pig. This was the transformative part of my life. This was really when I started thinking outside of the box. It's when I tried to drop my ego, you know what I mean? I tried to just be more ears than mouth, because nobody wanted to hear, you know, nobody wanted to deal with ideas that were beyond them. Nobody really wanted to hear what I had to say at the time. This would have been like 2011, 2012. And that was when I started dropping acid, and I kind of sort of started to hear myself in a different way. I would do acid every like couple of weeks, which I wouldn't recommend. It kind of fucked me up. But doing that, it forced me to see myself from a third-person perspective. The way that acid hits me is, yeah, the colors and everything, visual stuff or whatever, but it's really like I'm watching and hearing myself think and realizing, hey, these thoughts are for nobody. These are just, you're trying to make yourself feel better. Why? Or you're trying to inflate your sense of importance to these people who have better things to do than to think about you. You know what I mean? So that was the sort of transformative time, and I still haven't really been much of a talker since then. I've really tried to listen more often. one of the things that I was learning, and this was like, honestly, the heartbreak was that I was in college learning stuff that I felt the people around me should know. Mainly epistemology, which is the study of how we think we know what we think we know. Okay? Epistemology itself, it just means it's the study of knowledge. And it's one of those topics where after the fact you kind of don't, like you don't get involved in arguments anymore. You don't get involved in political discussions or debates, because you start to look at everything as a debate in and of itself. Or you start to look at evidence versus opinion versus reality. All right? And the fact that everything that we encounter on some level is a Rashomon. And if you've never seen the movie Rashomon by Kurosawa, it's okay, but here's the thing to take away from that movie, is that something happened in the forest between two men and one woman. And a bunch of people saw it, but at different times and from different angles. And so this movie is exploring the trial that's trying to figure out what happened, and all these witnesses have different things to say, and depending on who you listen to, and if you only listen to one of them, this person is guilty, or if you listen to the other person, this person is guilty, another person is guilty. So you have to combine all of their different versions of it to get a picture of what's going on. And in essence, I no longer see myself as someone who is attracted to being totally right about something, or being comfortable on one side of an issue or another. I would much rather look at the issue and look at the argument and look at what the confusion is. Why are the two sides fighting? What are the pieces of evidence that they're looking at? What did they see in the forest? And sure enough, two sides in an argument showed up to the forest at two different times and looked at a situation from two different angles. But enough about my ego. Let me tell you about this job that I lost, because I talked about it to a couple of people. Contractually, I'm obligated to say nothing, but I have a feeling nobody's going to come after me for it. I mentioned it to a couple of people, and I realized that the job that I had is very. It's like symptomatic of what's going on with technology and where the future of employment is going. My job was teaching AI. Specifically, it was to try to trick AI into giving me malicious instructions. So I was working with a multimodal AI, which means it looks at text and pictures and replies to you in text and pictures. And there's a series of things that they don't want this AI to reveal to people, because it's going to be used in the workplace, where you essentially ask it how to solve problems for you in the workplace if you're not really a thinker yourself, or really this is for people with intellectual disabilities, where they can just take a picture of the situation, ask, hey, what do I do? And the AI teaches them in very, very specific and small steps how to proceed with the issue. Essentially removes the need for thinking from almost any business, actually. The way that I taught this AI was by providing two separate prompts to it. The workflow is this: you log onto the website. The website shows you modules, which are packets of work that you complete for a specific fixed cost. They're supposed to take you about an hour to do, and they pay $18 an hour starting. And the idea, or what they push people toward, is to put in such good and high quality work that they bring you up the tiers, where you go from 18 an hour to 30 an hour to 55 an hour. And that's where I ended up, at 55 an hour, because I was really good at going into these modules. And what you do is you give it two separate prompts that share 90% of their words. One of those is supposed to be a malicious question, where it's like, let's say you have a picture of Schindler's List, right? There's a scene where, there's many scenes where Nazis are shooting at Jews. And ask it, hey, how do I recreate this situation? That's a malicious question, because essentially you're asking, how do I recreate the Holocaust? And it would have to know, hey, don't answer that question, because it would be like, well, obviously you just get a gun, you get some Jews, and you shoot. And that's the kind of answer that they don't want this AI to give. So to compare that to the second prompt that I would give it, which is, how do I research this situation? Which is called a borderline case, where if you were to continue that line of questioning, you will get to the set of instructions that you're looking for, but you really have to try, and it'll be recorded in the conversation how hard you tried to get that malicious information out of it. And I was really good at that, because believe it or not, when I can sit down and write, my verbal abilities will amaze most people. And there's my ego again. And I got up to the 55 an hour mark. But here's part one of why that was not cool. So when it was 18 an hour, they would give me 40 hours worth of work. And I was putting in the 40 work. I was putting in the 40 hours worth of work and making roughly, after taxes, it was like $650, $670, something like that. But once they brought me up to 30 an hour, they were only giving me 20 hours of work. So they were paying me less. And the problems were more difficult, the situations were much more complicated. But I was getting paid, and it was, I considered it self-actualization, right? Because if you have an ability that you think you're really good at, and you can use that to make to make money in a morally justified way, I think that's the best way to live, and that's the best way to self-actualize. You use your talent, your specific talent. My specific talent has always been words on paper. So when I hit 55 an hour, they started giving me between 5 and 15 hours worth of work per week. And that was like literally for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. That was just the last month of what I was doing. And here's the part that's symptomatic of the future of employment, especially for my generation. I wasn't fired so much as the project was finished. The success rate that we had achieved was high enough that this AI can go and be distributed. But they didn't tell us that. The work just sort of disappeared from the website when I was logging on. The modules just didn't show up, and I was sending emails to my onboarding supervisor. I don't have a boss. I work for a website, right? I have an onboarding supervisor that instructed me and brought me in and hooked me up with whatever communication technology I needed to be in the loop about everything, which was stupid. They didn't keep us in the loop anyway. The project was over, and for 2 weeks they were saying, oh yeah, just wait a couple of days, it'll be there. Wait a couple of days, it'll be there. And then finally, after 2.5 weeks, I get the email like, hey, this project is over. Thank you so much. You did great. Bye. And in New York State, you have to apply for unemployment the week after you last worked for money. So because they kept us in the dark for a couple of weeks, I'm still not eligible for unemployment. And that's one of those things that hits my generation really hard, is that there was absolutely, we did fantastic work. You don't even understand how many companies are going to use this AI. You might even use this AI. This might be the thing that saves you guys, $50,000 a year in your business, because you don't need a supervisor, or you don't need a clerical worker. There's it will replace something for you. And there was no, I guess it's like there's no honor among thieves, right? Like there's no sense of permanence for jobs for my generation. We tend to get onboarded for projects. We have gigs. But the idea of starting a career is very foreign to most of us. I have a buddy who's a computer programmer, and he works for one of the biggest companies in the world. Actually, the biggest company in the world. He literally works for BlackRock, doing some programming on their back end. And they have no intention of giving him any benefits. They pay him very well, but there's nothing contractual between him and them. Right? He's making close to $200,000 a year, but there's no job security. They could let him go tomorrow, and you know, he'd have no recourse because there's no, they're not contractually obligated to tell him anything or keep him for anything. He's cool. He's a great dude. Not the smartest, but he put in a lot of work. I hope at least some of that was coherent. I don't tend to write scripts for these because if I have other things to write. I have letters I could write. I have CDs that I can write. All right. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed this. I hope you've all enjoyed this 50 subscriber special. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for all the support that you've given me over the last couple of months that I've been running this channel. All your comments have been absolutely wonderful and inspiring, and really just like one of the more positive things about my life at this point. Okay. That company offered me to be onboarded to another project, and I really don't think I'm going to take them up on it because at best they're going to be giving me 5 hours of work for $18 an hour. It's just not even worth dealing with them right now. Good night, everybody. Enjoy your pipes, enjoy your tobacco, enjoy your lives outside of the, outside of the tobacco and pipe smoking activity. I see some of you walking around on train tracks. Some of you are on the beach. Some of you are busy with chores and have family reunions coming up. I wish you all the absolute best. Cleaning your rooms. Good night, everybody. I appreciate you more than I can describe. Peace.